Hey everyone, my name is Jeremy Amogus and welcome to my video. In today's video, I will be showing you how to create a simple calculator using the WPF and the C Sharp program. This calculator is similar to what you see in a real-world applications where a user enters number, perform operations, and gets result. Now let's get started. So when I create a program, it automatically uh, enter the code. So what are we looking at is this is an example of basic XAML file in WPF, but what does the XAML do? XAML is a way to design user interfaces in WPF application. Again, this is like HTML for C Sharp application. Instead of writing long C Sharp code to create buttons and labels, we use XAML to structure the UI visually. Now let's break this line by line. So the window element, the first thing you see here is this one window. This tells WPF that we're creating a window for our application. Think of it as the container for everything you'll see on the screen. And then this means that this is where the windows end. Without this, the program will not work. Uh, this one, this is the this connects our XAML file designs to our C Sharp file, which is the main window XAML C Sharp. And that means when we click a button, we can write a C Sharp logic in the background to make things happen. And this one here is uh, the first XLM XMLNS is required for all WPF project because it includes everything we need for UI design. And the XMLNS X gives us extra features like naming elements and adding code, adding and is inside the window. I want to put a title, simple calculator, and then I want to put the height to 400 and the width is 300 and the background is light blue. So it shows invalid because you have to make sure that you have the right spelling. So here, title, and the background is light blue. So now it shows the height and the size of the calculator I want, and it shows here that the title of my calculator, I'll just call it simple calculator. So the next method, I want to put the grid. Grid. So this is the grid tag. This is the core container that holds and organizes all the UI elements inside it. And uh, inside the grid, this is where all the core containers that holds and organizes all the UI elements inside it. So inside the grid, this is where we put later on the buttons, the text boxes, and the labels in rows and columns, much like a table. Now let's break down the rest of the layout for our simple calculator. Next, we put the label name equals display label, and the content equals 0. We make sure that we also end so that the WPF will recognize uh, what we're doing. And again, it's a wrong spelling. 0 horizon alignment should be right, and the vertical alignment should be top. So if you notice, it's on the right and the top. So this is where the label. So label element is used to display text or a content. And in this case, we're using it to display the numbers on the calculator. And the name display label, this is the identifier for this label. We'll use this name to access the label in C# and change its content during the calculation. And the content 0, the initial content is set to 0, which is what the calculator will be display when it first starts. And then I also want to put the font size. So sometimes I just double click so that it's easier for me and I don't have to enter it manually. Font size, this makes the number appear large and easy to read. And uh, this one, the horizontal alignment, is it aligns the text to the right of the label. So this is what it shows, and shows the 0. And the vertical top, alignment top, this is here, the vertical and the horizontal. And the width is 280, and the height, I want it 60. And I also want to put the margin. And next, I like to put the background as black. So let's just choose background and then choose black. So now it changed the background as black. Now we cannot see the 0, the color. So let's put here the foreground as white so that it will be seen. And I also like to put the padding, which is 5. the so the foreground is this makes the text color white so it stands out against the black background. And the padding, it adds some spaces inside the label so that the text doesn't touch the edges here. And I would like to put the border thickness equals 2 and the border brush to gray. So this is the border and the thickness to make it look sharp and nice. And I want to change the font weight. I want it more thicker into bold. So change to bold. You can also change it to semi-bold, whatever your preferences is. But I would like to set this to bold. So this label is where all the numbers and results will be displayed later. And next, the next method I want to put on my calculator is the state label for on and on. So label, name, state, label, content equals off. So the state label, it's this is the name of the label for easy reference in C sharp, and the content of initially the calculator starts in the off state. So the content says off. So if you notice the off here is already appear, but I want that to show um more clear because the user will not be able to see that display. So let's use again the horizontal alignment, and I want it to be in the center. And then vertical alignment. So it aligns the button panel in the center vertically. And I'll put here stop. So it shows here the off now at the top, but it's still not um, pleasing to the eye of the user. So the font size should be 15. Yeah, that's better. And the width should be 2. Let's try 200. I think that's too small. Should be 2, maybe 280. And I want to move that. The height should be 30. The margin maybe 10. Now it's moving. Let me try 70. Now it's showing now because I adjust the margin 10, 0. And I'll also want to change the background. I want the background something dark gray. Now it changed the background, and the, I want this more darker, and I want it the font weight bold. So let's go back. Let's change the text by using the foreground and put black. So it gets more darker, and the font weight should be bold. Now it's more clearer, and I want to add some space around the text. So padding 5. Now let's move to the button panel, and I would like to put a note here for me to easier to identify the program that I've written. So in the button panel, I'd like to use the grid. So grid, let me retype again, grid, with an end tag, and inside the grid, uh, inside the main grid, we've defined another inner grid to organize all the calculator buttons. And I will put horizontal alignment, center, and vertical alignment into center as well. And for the margin, 10, maybe 110. Let's test 10 and 10. So this means that aligns the entire button panel in the center horizontally, and the other one, it aligns the button panel in the center vertically. So that would be here and here. Later you will see that. And then next, inside the inner grid, I'd like to put grid definition. So grid, then here row definition, and then I will put here. So this means that the inner grid also has rows and columns defined within the following tags. So these are row definition, the height, auto. And I can just copy paste this for easier 5 times. So this rows, the rows are used to define the vertical layout of the buttons. And then uh, we will put here another grid definition, but this time the column, grid column definition, and then put the column definition with equals the star, and then let's just copy paste this into 4 times. So this means that it defines the horizontal layout of the buttons. This results in a 4 by 4 button grid with rows for numbers, operators, and special buttons like clear and equals. And the next method, we have to create a button for numbers and operators. So here, um, I'll put a note here, but I will change it to on button for me to easy to identify the program, and then put button here with the end tag name on button, and the content should be on, and click on button, click, and the grid row equals 0, and the grid column equals to 0. And I also like to change the width into 60. So now you can see the clearly the on, and the height, I want to make it bigger to 50, and also the background, I want to change it to dark gray, and I want the text more clear. So for the text, use the foreground black and make the font size bigger. I want it 20. I think 20 is too big. Change it to 18. So that's the on button. While for the off button, I would also like to put notes here. We can just copy paste and change some other information here into off. So this one should be off, off. Content should be off, and put the off button, and the grid rate should be 0, 1, so that, because if you put 0, they will be both in the center and you cannot see the other button. So put 1, and the same with height, the background dark gray, and the same font size. By this, it makes the text size on the button a bit larger and easier to read. And each button, like button 1 and button 2 or 3, has a similar attributes, but they have different content. And now let's go to the number button. So I will put here a note. Number button, and I will set button 1 button name. So button 1. So let's end the, so that the WPS can read what we read in the program, and then the content is the display 1. So you can see the 1 now, and the click, set it to number button underscore click, and the grid row should be 1, grid row 1, and grid dot column 2 1, this should be 1. It specifies the button's position in the grid, which is row 1, and oh, this should be 0, because the next number would be the number 1, the number 2. So this is where you put the number 1, and here is the number 2, and so on. And next is enabled equals to false. And for me, it's still not clearer. I'd like to change the width, maybe 60, and change the height to 50. Now it's bigger, and change the background. I want it dark gray. And I want to change the text to black. So foreground black, and make the text bigger. change the font size to 18. Now you can see it's more clearer, and you can also change the font weight. I'd like to put here the font weight into bold. So the number 1 is uh, clearer and bigger, and it's easy for user to see the numbers. And the next step, we will just uh, change and copy paste this, since it's just the same, and we will just change the size and the button number. So this should be 2, and the column, change it to 1 so that it will go on the other side. False, the width should be same, height should be the same. To bold. And here we just need to keep changing the row and the column so that we can see every all the button. So these are the row and the column. And then next, copy paste again the button 3, and let's change the number button 3 and the content to display the number 3, and change the row into 1, still the same, and I want it in the column 3, in the third column. So again, this is the row and the column, same font size. And next, button number 4, so I want to put the number 4 here. So first change the number button 4 and change the content into 4. And since this is we want to put the row here and the row 2, change the grid that row into 2 and keep the column 0, and so on. So 5, 5, 2, and the column should be 1. 2, and the column should be 3. Should be 6. Button 6. Still the same, 1. Next, button 7. 7. Change the content to 7. And the 7 should row number 3. and should be in the first column, which is 0. Next, number 8 should be in the row 3, but column number 1. And the last one is number 9, should be number 3. Number 2. This should be number 3, row 3, in a column on the third column. So now it shows all the number 1 to 9. So if you notice, uh, each uh, each button from button 1 to button 9 has similar attributes, but they have different content, the numbers and operators. The next method is the for making the operator buttons. So I'll just copy paste this note and modify and change to operator button. Now here we can also copy paste the program on the number button and paste it under operator button, but we have to make sure that we modify this for the operator button. So this is add button. The content is the plus sign, and instead of number button, change this to operator button, and operator button underscore click, and the grid row should be 1. We want this to the in row 1, and the column is number 3. So here I want all the operator button on this side, and it's still the same with the 60, the height is 50, background um I want to change the background. So I want to change the background. I forgot to change the background earlier. I want something different aside from dark gray, and there is also an option. Instead of putting the name of it, you can use through numbers. So you just need to put shift and then 4682B4. 4682B4 is like a shade of blue. It's a shade of blue, but I'll just put here uh number instead. 4. You can see the color, it turns to blue. And let's just copy paste. If you notice, it changed the background. Change background. Alright, so here on the operator button, instead of putting the number button, change it to add button and then put the plus symbol and then operator button underscore click, and we want to change the color into orange, so orange. We can also change, instead of using the word orange, use a number. F88C00, which is orange, and copy paste. Next is the subtract button. Also remove the number 9. The subtract button is the minus sign, operate, and then change the grid here. So this is row 2, column number 3. So there, it shows the subtract button. And copy paste it again for the multiply button. So multiply is the star or the X. You can use X. Make it smaller. And then it should be on the row 3. And column number 3. So there it shows the multiply button. Next is we want the division button. So copy paste again and put here divide button and enter the division symbol, and this should be in the row 4, column number 3. Alright, that's it for the operator button. And the last part is the clear and equals button. So let's put a note here, clear and equals button. So the clear C and equals button have a unique colors, and I wanted to make it red for the clear button, and for the equal button I wanted it to green. So we can just copy paste this again and change the button name to clear button, change the content to equals or C, and the change the operator to clear button, and the row is correct but change to first column, and I want to change it to red. And next is the equals button. So equal, and change the content to equals, then change this to equal button click, and should be row 4 column 2. And we forgot to put the 0 button here, so we can go back to the number button and just add it here. So just add it here. Button name is 0 button, 0. Content should be 0. Should be 0. And number click, that's correct. And since it's a row 4, we put this in row 4 and change the column onto the first column. And that's it. So that's what I want for my calculator. Simple and easy for you to understand. So next, we will explain how this button interacts with the C# code to make the calculator work. So in this section of the code, we will explain how the logic behind the calculator works. The C# code defines how the calculator behaves when buttons are pressed, how the result is calculated, and how the calculator can be turned on or off. So first step, we will put here using using system Windows, and using system dot windows dot controls. So The using system, this imports basic system functions like the input and the output, and the system windows and the system windows control. These namespaces are for Windows Presentation Foundation, or the WPF, which provides tools to create the user interface. And we will put the command here, namespace simple calculator. This is the namespace which acts like a container for our program. It's named Simple Calculator because that's the name of our app. And inside of it, we put public partial class, window, main window, and window. This defines the main window of our calculator app, and the main window is the class that controls everything within the main window of the calculator. And inside of this window, we are going to declare variables, which is private string current operator equals, and the current operator, this means that the string will hold the operator, the plus, minus, multiply, and the division that the user selects. And the next is private double result equals 0. This holds the ongoing calculation result, and it starts at 0. And next is the private string current input equals the 2 apostrophe. This holds the current input holds the current input numbers entered by the user as a string. And then next, we have to create a constructor, which is the main window. And inside of it, uh, we put set up initialize component. So the main window constructor runs when the app starts. And this means that it set up the UI, or the user interface, based on the XAML code we wrote earlier. So the next method is we have to create the on button click. So private void on button click object sender route event args e. So this method is called when the on button is clicked. So what happens is it will enables all the numbers and operators buttons by using enable all buttons. So we will put here enable all buttons true. And on button is enabled equals false. On button and off button is enabled equals true. So it disables the on button itself so it can't be clicked again. And it ensures that the off button is enabled. And the last part is we have to put the state level content equals calculator on. So it will show here, it will show the state label here on or off. So we also need to put the off button click method. So the same thing, private void off button click object sender routed event E. And this method is called when the off button is clicked. So I will just copy paste this one here since it's almost the same, and we will modify it. So this one should be false. The other one is true. Off button is enabled equals 0, and the calculator will be turned off. So it enables, it disables all button except the on button to turn off the calculator. And it enables on button so the user can turn it back on. And the off button is disabled so it can't be clicked again. And the display label is reset to 0, and the state label shows calculator off. And the next method is we have to put the enable all button. So private void enable all buttons ball enable. So button 1 that is enabled equals enable. So this is wrong. This is only enable. This means that this helper method enables or disables all the buttons on the calculator. So let's just copy paste this to apply on other button from 1 to 9, and also the operators. So 2, this should be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is not just applicable to the numbers button, it's also applicable for the operators button and the clear equal button. So let's put here 0 button is enabled equals enable. Is enable. And let's just copy paste this and we can modify. So first let's start with the add, next the multiply, next is divide, and also the clear button and equal button. So what happens is when enable is true, all the buttons are enabled and can be clicked. And when enabled is false, all the buttons are disabled and cannot be clicked. And the off button is always enabled while turning the calculator on or off. And let's put here off button so that it's always enabled equals enable. So this will keep the off button enabled when turning on. And the next method is the number button click enabled. So here, so here, uh, we will put private void number button underscore click object sender routed event is E. This means, or the purpose of this is, this method is called when a number button like 1, 2, 3 is clicked. So let's put here button click button equals button sender, and current input click button content that to string and display the label of the content equals current input. So what happens here is the click button content, the number on the button is added to current input, and the display is updated to show the current input numbered entered so far. The next step is the operator button click method. The purpose of this method is called when an operator button, the plus, minus, times, or multiply, and the division is click. So we will put here private void operator button underscore click, then the object sender routed event args e. So button click button equals button sender if current input equals. So if current input is not empty, meaning the user has entered a number, and it will convert to the to a double and assign it to result parse current input. It clears the current input because we're ready to get the next numbers. And current operator equals click button dot content to string. It stores the selected operator like the plus, minus, the multiple, and division in the here in current operator. And the next part is we have to create the equal click method. This method is called to uh, perform the calculation based on the operator and displays the result. So private void equal button click object sender routed event e. And if current input is not equal, double second number equals double dot parse current input switch current operator. So if current input is not empty, it converts it to a number and stores it in a second number. And it then uses a switch statement, this one, to perform the operation based on the selected operator. And in this case, we will put case the plus symbol, result plus equals second number, break. And then the next is case, and the subtract symbol, then result, or easier you can copy and paste result number. And then next is case, is the multiple symbol, result second number. And next, make sure you also replace this to minus or subtract and the multiple or multiply. Next is the division. If second number is not equal to 0, result equals second number. Else, message show cannot divide by 0, then break. So this means that it adds the second number to the result and the subtract the second number from the result. This one is multiply the result by the second number, and this one is divide the result by the second number unless the second number is 0, in which case it shows an error message. And the result is displayed on the screen rounded to the 4 decimals. So for the 4 decimals, we put that here, display label content equals math that round result to string current input equals result to string current operator. And the last method is the clear button underscore click method. So private void clear button underscore click object sender routed event args e current input equals, and the result equals 0, display level content equals 0. So the purpose of this method is called when the C or the clear button is clicked. And what happens, it clears current input and resets the result to 0. And the display level is updated to show 0 and starting a fresh calculation. Alright, that's all for today. I was able to finish the program for WPF and for the C Sharp program for the calculator. Now, let's test our calculator to make sure everything is working as expected. And let's see here. First, uh, we'll turn on the calculator by clicking the on button, and you notice how the display changes and all the numbers button becomes enabled. And if we turn this off, we cannot press anything here, and it shows the label calculator off. If it's on, it enables me to uh, click the button, and it also display the changes. And it also shows here on label calculator is on. Now let's do a simple addition. 1 plus 2 equals 3. Now let's try a subtraction. 5. We can also we can also clear it, and it goes back to 0. So 5 minus 3, then press equal. The result is 2. And let's refresh or clear. Let's try the multiplication. 2 times 3, the result should be 6. Equals 6. It's also correct. Now, let's finish with the um, division test. And let's use the decimal to see if it rounded into 4. So 10 point, so again, 10 divide 3. So this rounds the result to 4 decimal places. After rounding, the value becomes 3.333. Let's try something else for the division. 6 divide 2, the result should be 3. Let's see if it's correct. Perfect. So now everything works as expected, and you'll see the correct results displayed. And finally, I will turn off the calculator, and I'll click the off button, and again notice how all the buttons gets disabled and the display resets to 0. All right, that's it for today, and thank you for watching.